Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to In the Growth Space. My name is David McGlennon, and I'm your host, and really super glad that you've chosen to be here with me. We talk on this podcast a lot with leaders who've gone on their own growth journey, and it's always great to be able to hear their journey and then glean insights from that growth journey. Sometimes it's a personal growth journey. Sometimes it's a business growth journey. Sometimes it's a journey of just growing a team. But today, we're gonna listen to the story of a great leader, Kim McKenna Johnson, and I'll tell you more about her in just a moment. But I think that it's such a great way to learn from each unique story. And so what I want to encourage you to do today is as Kim shares her story, try to pull out some of the things, some of the principles that she is describing in her own journey and find out ways that you can implement something that she says. Maybe it's just by virtue of having somebody around you that can help pick you up when you're not feeling great, or when you've fallen from a misstep or a failure. There's so many great lessons in this conversation, and I'm really excited to bring Kim to you here today. So let me tell you a little bit about her. First and foremost, she is an amazing wife, a mother, and now grandmother. She is the CEO of One Cross Medical. She is a passionate teacher and a passionate leader who has a real quality heart to serve and to help people. You're gonna pick that up right away in this conversation. We're gonna talk a lot about what it takes to pursue a dream, and really what that journey feels like, what it looks like, and what it's not. She has some really great advice, and I believe that if you listen and you listen intently to her story, I think you're going to find yourself. I know I did. I found myself, and I know that it's also going to give you hope to be able to have your own dream ignited, and maybe even for the first time have a dream sparked for you. We talk a little bit about having someone to be that dream igniter, that dream sparker for you, and how important it is to have somebody come alongside you to help you to really foster that dream, and to maybe even dream bigger than what you could have dreamt on your own. We also talk about the transition from working in the business to being the CEO of the business, and what that process was like. She describes that process, and I think there's some really important lessons there, and so I want you to really pay attention to that. It's towards the end of our conversation. And I know you probably know this, but leadership and growth is not a straight line. And when you listen to Kim's message and her story, you'll understand that. And she describes her journey, and it's not one that's just a straight line of success. And so I hope that you really pay attention to this story from this great leader. Let's go ahead and get into this conversation with Kim McKenna Johnson right now. Well, hey, Kim, welcome to In the Growth Space. I'm so honored to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, David. I appreciate being here.
Well, I'm so excited just to hear your story, and I know it's a story of growth, but it's also a story of a faith journey as well, and I'm really excited to have you share that as well. So let me start with, what got you into the medical field in the first place? What got you into into healthcare?
Oh, I think it was just always, as a little kid, I always said I was going to be a nurse.
Oh,
So
neat.
yeah, I took care of a grandma that was always sick. So everybody just called me their little nurse, and I became that. So that was
Wow.
my dream. So,
Wow, that's so from a young age you were dreaming of being a nurse. That's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very cool. So, what then led you to start your own company, your own health clinic? Because I know that obviously, you're CEO of One Cross Medical, and I think I just love to hear the story of like how that came to be. What led you to be a clinic owner, as opposed to just being a nurse for a hospital or a doctor's office or something like that.
Mm. Uh, I think, it really started just seeing a huge need in our community. And so I was
Mm,
seeing a lot of people. I was working for a hospital clinic, and there were a lot of people that, were coming that very late in illness because they couldn't afford it. Or I'd see a single mom,
mm,
bring her kid in there for care, barely pulling the money together, being sick herself. And
mm.
honestly, I just started looking for a place to volunteer. I didn't intend on
Oh,
opening a clinic. I live in rural Kentucky, so
uh-huh.
I started looking for, a free clinic or a Salvation Army or something like that to volunteer on some of my
Oh, yeah.
extra time, and I didn't find one.
Oh, wow.
So, um, I started searching for organizations that could help me to find a place to help others. And
Mm,
so I found an organization called Christian Community Health Fellowship. And so I
okay.
started attending their conferences, kind of listening to like minded people that really had a passion for helping
Mm.
people. And they had classes there that said how to start a clinic. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I started taking those, and but they always said you had to have a physician champion. So I'm a nurse
Okay.
practitioner.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not a physician, so I got to find this person that's like-minded.
Mm,
And that was very difficult to find somebody within, I was looking in my church that
sure.
really had a similar vision. Some
Mm,
people would do it. I had one come up, yes, I'll do it. And they went to the pastor and they wanted to be the medical minister and, really have this big title. I didn't care about a title, I don't know. I just wanted to serve people. So
yeah, sure.
um, went through that journey for a while, trying to do that with the church
Mm,
and all of that. And that was a long journey. To
mm,
I remember asking God, why is this so hard?
mm.
Trying to get a board together, trying to get people on the same page, trying to get people to actually do some action items to help
Mm-hmm.
get it started. And people wanted to be on the board and they wanted a name, but they didn't want to do any of the work. Um,
Oh, yeah.
so uh, so at one point there were some personal things that were going on. I actually was going through a divorce, and I
Mm,
just laid it down because things were not coming together. And there was a
yeah,
vision at that time. We were talking about, oh, everybody's going to have health care, and so maybe this situation is going to go away, which
sure.
we know it didn't.
Right.
But I'll go back a little further. I think I was so passionate about it, David, because my journey in becoming a nurse wasn't easy. So,
Mm,
I was kind of grew up very poor. I was pregnant at 16. I was a high school dropout.
mm-hmm.
Um, so, the fact that I even became a nurse is actually a miracle in itself.
Oh, wow.
To do that. So, in that journey,
Mm,
I had to, bring my children to the free clinic. I had to,
sure.
experience what it was like not to have health insurance, or even to
Mm,
have the state health insurance and know how providers treated you differently. And,
uh,
experienced a lot of um, just really negative treatment with medical providers because of that. And so it really gave me a
mm,
passion to never do that, to
mm-hmm.
treat everybody, no matter about what their socioeconomic status is, no matter what their
Yeah,
anything is, that they're humans. They're
right.
all created in the image of God,
Love
and
that.
we treat everybody with love, respect, honor, and dignity. And
Mm,
so,
it's great.
that kind of, I think when I saw that need there, it really struck it in me because I knew what that felt like, not to be
Mm-hmm.
sometimes have a place to take your children when your children were sick, not being able
Mm-hmm.
to afford the medication that they needed to get better. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it tugged my heart in it. And so I think that's where the passion came from. And
Yeah.
so it's really neat how God uses parts of our life that we think are really horrible or horrible situations, but he takes it and he fuels it and he uses it
Yeah.
for good. And
So
so
good.
Yeah, a lot of people will call me and say, Kim, I want your advice. I want to open a clinic. And, I always ask them what their reason is. Many say,
Yeah.
well, it's because my boss isn't doing things correctly and I know I can do it better. Or, it's disgruntled with something or another. And so
Mm,
I usually suggest to them to go find another employer because it takes more. It takes a lot.
right.
It's not an easy journey, and if you don't have
Mm,
something else besides you, running that passion, or then you're going to quit. Um,
yeah. Yeah. Well, and I find it's sometimes in order to do what you're doing and actually to start a company, it takes passion and it takes being tied into your purpose too.
mhm,
And and I've always found it interesting as I talk with people who have gone through a growth journey like you just described, how God uses the pain of our lives and sometimes painful life circumstances to fuel our passion and to fuel our purpose because we get it. We understand. Like you said, I understand what it means to have to go to a free clinic or, find ways to take my kids to, get medical care. And I think that that's really important for, I think, our listeners to understand is that think about the pain that you've gone through. Think about maybe it's trauma, maybe it's some kind of a difficult circumstance, and what did you learn through that, and what is that fueling for your future? I think sometimes that's a way, people want to like tuck it away and forget about it,
mhm.
but I think oftentimes it's an opportunity for us to really fuel our own purpose and really tap into why God created us to be here in the first place.
Absolutely. I think I've learned to look at those hard times much differently than I used
Mm,
to. When hard
yeah,
times came, what am I doing wrong, God? Why am I?
yeah,
You kind of feel like it's a punishment. And now I've
right.
learned to take it as, God, what am I supposed to learn from this? And
Mm-hmm.
what did I learn from back then during those hard situations? And I learned a lot that has really helped
Yeah,
me now.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
how can I learn and what am I supposed to learn through this? And um, sometimes I
That's
say,
the cool.
help me learn it quickly, but
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that. uh, but yeah, I mean, I think that asking those questions, of ourselves, asking those questions of God,
yeah,
I think those are important because it's like, and I think it's also important what questions we ask.
yes.
Oftentimes I know, well, I'll just speak for myself. I've asked in the past, why God? Why is this happening to me?
Yes.
But if we reframe it and we go, God, what is this teaching me?
Hmm.
What character quality is this building in me? Why is this happening for me?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
gives us a different perspective, doesn't it?
It definitely does. Definitely does. And
Yeah.
and just hearing, you talk about that perspective, really I've just learned that perspective, um, just maybe in the last year or two from different, speakers
Mm,
or different people. Oh, this is happening
sure.
for me. But, I learned earlier on to stop victimizing the things that were
Mm,
happening and start thinking about it as a learning experience. Um,
yeah.
and and you know some of the valleys are tough, and but
Yeah.
when you look at it from that perspective, you can analyze things better from a different point of view and mindset.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm kind of curious, why did you decide to focus in on like the rural community? What's the pull there? I know obviously you live in a rural community, but I mean, is that solely it? Just you wanted to be able to kind of help the people in your own community?
Hmm. Yeah. So the county that I live in, there were none, nobody taking care of people that had Medicaid, which is a state program, and there
Mm-hmm.
was nobody taking care of the people that didn't have insurance. Eh, Or, it was the emergency room, or they had to leave the county to get care. And if you're,
Mm,
living in a poor situation, it's very difficult to get transportation. So when I
mm,
was going through my journey, I was living in a city, I was living in Lexington, and so there were more resources there. There were free
sure.
clinics there. There was the bus system. Now you still had to have money to get on the bus, but it didn't
Yeah.
cost as much as having a vehicle. There's nothing like that here. There are no buses here.
Mm,
Um, there's not a free clinic across the town that I can go to. So
mm,
there was a lot of suffering going on.
yeah. Wow. And I'm assuming too that in that rural community, people are, I'm guessing, probably more appreciative too of the care because they don't, they didn't have it until One Cross came along. They didn't have it, and then they do have it, and so that appreciation is probably more profound, I would guess.
And I think mostly what they appreciate is being treated well.
Mm,
Take our time
yeah.
with every person. Sometimes despite your behavior, because if you're struggling with addiction or you're struggling with a
Yeah.
mental illness, sometimes your
Yeah.
behavior isn't that great. And we love them
Yeah.
anyway and work really hard with the whole team to bring them to wholeness. So
Mm,
sometimes the journey
yeah.
is rough, but we keep sticking with them. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I see mostly, despite this, you still didn't give up on me and you still worked with me. And so sometimes it takes years to bring somebody um, to health. And health can be described differently. A lot of us think it's our physical bodies, but a
Mm,
lot of it is our mindset and our mental states too.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, and I guess talk a little bit about that too, because you treat the whole person and you treat holistically, I would think it would be easy. I'm not a medical professional, but I would think it would be easy to simply just focus on the body, health of the body. But really, from what I know of your organization, you not only treat the body, but you help the behavioral health, the mental, you help with addictions. You also help just in the wellness space as well. And so I guess maybe I get my question is what led you to kind of look at that holistically, from a medical perspective, or from health, from a holistic perspective.
um, I think part of it probably is my own journey. I came from a
Mm.
lot of brokenness in my, childhood and home, and I've always been on a journey for my own personal healing. And I
Yeah. Mm.
also recognized too in the people that I'm treating that 80% of what I'm treating is um, mental health issues that have manifested in the body. And
Yeah.
if we ignore that part, then we're not going to get the body healed. And so even our thought
Mm.
processes about the illness, um, and we've forgotten so much. It really frustrates me how healthcare has come and forgotten a lot of things. We've gone, very um, pharmaceutical, and we've
Yeah.
forgotten that our bodies were created to really heal themselves.
Yeah.
But we have to work with that. So,
Mm-hmm.
helping people to understand that, helping bring people to that
Mm.
mindset of that, and we've really been lied to a lot and thinks we're a victim of our genetics. Well, if you're a victim of your genetics, then
Yeah.
you're a victim, right? You can't do anything
Yeah.
about it. Just give me this
Right.
pill to fix this thing that I've obtained genetically. And a
Yeah.
lot of times it's patterns of behavior that have been passed on from generation to generation. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're thought that,
Yeah.
then you're helpless, right? So
Yeah. Supposedly.
supposedly, right?
Yeah.
So that's what so many people believe. And so it's really helping to shift that belief system, or how anger and unforgiveness, can,
Mm.
you know, cause so much havoc in your system and body and lead to heart
Mm-hmm.
disease and cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I progress more and looking into this journey, I see a lot of wisdom in dead people. Dr.
Mm.
Norman Vincent Peale, he was so
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
many medical people sent patients to him to help their patients change their mindset to heal their bodies because they knew
Yeah.
that they couldn't heal them. They knew it was a mindset issue. And
Mm.
so we have forgotten. So many studies were done many, many years ago about this thought process causes hypertension and this thought process causes diabetes. But we don't talk about that. We don't teach that in medical schools, and we don't teach
Yeah.
that to our patients. So I think it's
Mm.
going back and relearning some of those things, and start working with providers first, teaching them
Sure. Yeah.
different modalities to help bring to their patients. And then really, people are so indoctrinated with the pills, helping them
Yeah.
see we can work in a different manner. So, but a lot of times it's spiritual too. Um,
Sure.
there's we're spiritual beings, right? And so if
Mm-hmm.
we do that portion of somebody, and a lot of that is just related to purpose. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a amazing patient. I just love to see him now, but he was in addiction for a long time, homeless,
Mm.
and jumping from couch to couch, and lost two children to addiction.
Mm.
So there was a lot of tremendous guilt. We had him on suicide watch a lot, sent
Oh.
him inpatient a lot, for just mental breakdowns. And but I started asking him questions about what he wanted, and nobody ever asked him that before. Well, what
Mm.
took me
Mm.
3 visits of asking that question. He
Mm.
said, "Well, I really would like to sleep in the same bed every night." And I'm like, "Great,
Mm.
you finally got, you know, a,
Yeah.
something,
Something. Yeah. Right.
and some people would think, well, that's so trivial. Like, where is that going to lead him? But that kept leading him to. So we're like, well, great. Well, one thing can you do to bring you closer to that? And we kept having those conversations. So as I was
So
treating his
great.
addiction, while we were, working with the team in that, we started really supporting him and asking those questions. And he thought he couldn't be employed. He couldn't work around people. He
Mm.
was too anxious. He was too broken. And
Mm.
so now he is gainfully employed for many years now. He is leading a whole team of people in his
Wow.
place of employment. Um, and he was married by one of our chaplains here.
Oh, cool.
Um, and so, it's just beautiful to watch that healing. But that took a while, and that took a lot
Yeah.
of a team coming around him and believing in him. And when he felt
Yeah.
discouraged and he couldn't, we lifted him up and supported. But that's holistic care. That's not just,
Mm.
okay, you're coming in and out, and I'm going to give you this pill for your anxiety, or this pill for
Mm-hmm.
your addiction, or whatever that is. Um,
Yeah.
you're just meeting the person where they're at, and helping
Mm-hmm.
to open those discussions and tell them nobody told him he was created for a purpose. Like, God didn't mean for you to
Yeah.
be here. You mean God
Mm.
loves me? Yes, God adores you. Right where you're
Yeah.
right where you are. All the mistakes you've made, all the mistakes I've
Mm.
made, He
Yeah.
completely adores you. And
Hmm.
you
So
know,
great.
being able to develop relationship with the patients and let them know that um,
Mm.
it,
Yeah.
it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, what I hear you describe is a lot of really it's a growth journey for the patients too. And it's a journey. It's not I think so oftentimes in today's society, we've been conditioned to say, here, just take this pill and instantly it's all your troubles are going to be over. And what you're describing is that process. It's an ugly process. It's a process that doesn't have a straight line, and but it takes time, and it takes developing a relationship, and it takes work. And you're describing the growth process, not only just in the physical healing of a body and mind and spirit, but you're also talking about a growth journey of just how do we connect with our purpose? How do we grow in our own personal passion and connecting even to God for that matter? And I think that's a really cool thing, and I think it's really neat what you're doing, because people are coming to you because something isn't right or they're not feeling good in their body,
Yeah.
but you can talk to them about other things, and you can take their being holistically. I think that's great.
Yeah. And that's asking questions. Well, besides, you're coming to me for hypertension today, and but how are you? You know,
Yeah.
how's your family? Tell me more about, and really, understanding the whole dynamics of the person and what's going on with
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be a coach in and of itself, be able to kind of get that stuff, information out of them and have them begin thinking as well.
yes, yes. But we heal in relationship, and
Mm. Yeah,
it,
that's good.
it's so important. And God's word says
So
that
good.
so much. And when we're hurt, we isolate and we try to hide in isolation. And even, I
Yeah.
mean, even in our places of worship, we come and put our, pretty clothes on and we smile. And, people ask you how you are. I'm great. Even if you're just broken inside and hurting, we don't typically share that there.
Yeah.
So where is a
Yeah.
safe place to be able to talk about those things? Or some
Mm-hmm.
people that have been extremely church hurt, like, um,
Yeah.
and don't want to go there. Um, a clinic seems to be. I feel very humbled because just putting a white coat on, people have this level of trust, and it's very
Yeah.
sobering and very humbling that they trust you
Mm-hmm.
with their life. Um,
It's
you know,
almost like their deepest life, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and you don't take that lightly. That's not a it's not a
Mm-hmm.
light thing. So
Yeah, yeah. So I'm kind of curious so you're approaching your 10th year anniversary coming up in January, which is really cool to make it, first of all, at any organization making it past, 3 years and 5 years is pretty cool, but you're hitting the 10-year mark and I think that's really impressive and it's special. What, as you look at that mark and as you look into the future, how do you create more growth for your organization and even you personally? It's not because I know it's not about like growth as in I want to I want to be the biggest, I want to be the best, all that kind of stuff, but it like what how do you measure your growth or how do you even think about your own growth as an organization and then maybe just personally too?
I think for me the key has just been mentorship. Um,
Mm.
I'm so thankful, um, one for learning to ask for help, and I think
Oh
that
yeah.
that was a huge thing. I was
Sure.
raised very, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you pick yourself up. And sometimes
Yeah.
you can't pick yourself up, right?
Yeah.
Life hits you down and we need others to come alongside of us and do that. But
Mm-hmm.
about a year into opening the clinic, I didn't have a clue what I was doing, David. I had no clue. Um, I, I mortgaged everything I owned to open the clinic, and I had no knowledge of business. I had no knowledge of how to handle
Mm.
people. Clinic relationship and employee relationships are completely different. The
Yeah.
culture that I dreamed of, that I wanted, wasn't happening. Um,
Mm.
and somebody gave me a book called Intentional Living by John C. Maxwell. Never heard of him before,
Hmm.
never,
Love
never read leadership books. And so I read that book and it shook me. I
that.
was not living intentionally. And
Hmm.
from there, I joined the John Maxwell team. So I joined it thinking I'm going to learn the 12 things I need to do to be a better leader. And that
Yeah.
wasn't the case because him and the others around him, Paul Martinelli was huge in really talking about belief systems that um, you have that keep you from doing more, and
Yeah.
really started talking about how we were created for more. And
Hmm. Yeah.
sometimes, from my background, I had a very poverty mindset, and so
Hmm.
and the organization I joined had that as well.
Okay.
CCHF was very, if you're going to serve the poor, you need to be one, you need to live amongst them, you need to. And so I embraced that too. And that's not a great way to keep a business open.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It takes profit to be able to keep propelling the company into the future. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really does. And so we've had a lot of ups and downs. There's, 2019, we almost closed the doors, but
Hmm.
um, we kept fighting. But it was the support and the relationships and the mentorship from that John Maxwell team that is,
Mm.
I feel strongly why we're open. um,
Oh, wow.
that
Yeah.
why we've made it, and why we've grown, and really helped me to open up a vision greater than what I had. And
Mm. Yeah.
I think people are important.
Yeah, and I think as I hear you talk, it just is, it's a good reminder, I think, that others can help fuel our own vision and expand that vision, because I think that we can only do so much on our own. You said something earlier about, I think you used it in the context of healing, but we heal in community, but I think we also dream in community as well. And I just know personally that the people that I've been around have helped me to dream beyond where I dreamt for myself to begin with. And I know Paul talks about having to borrow other people's beliefs until you can believe it in yourselves. And I've had to do that at a number of occasions in my
Yes.
life. And I think that that's, if I hear your story right, I guess I would encapsulate one thing is that if you're listening to us and you're a leader of any sort, emerging leader, a senior leader, that there are times in our lives when we need other people. We need them all the time, but there are times when we especially need them to both pick us up and also then fuel our vision to be able to really to propel us into that purpose.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's even confronting us with wrong thinking.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I
That's the
remember
part that kind of stinks, right? I get it.
the first mastermind gathering we had. I was sitting in Paul's living room with all these new mastermind people, and we're introducing ourselves and what we did. And I said, my name is Kim McKenna, and I own a small clinic in Campbellsville. And Paul stopped me and he said, "Stop saying that." Um,
Yeah.
and if you keep saying it's small, and it's really not. And he asked me to share how many employees I hired. David, at the time, I had the largest clinic in the community, but I
Wow.
was still speaking. I just have this little clinic. Um, and
Mm.
so
Words matter, don't they?
words do matter. And,
Yeah.
you know, that those words, when you're around people that are really wanting you to grow, wanting you to improve, they're
Mm.
going to care enough to say, it, that's not right. You need to start speaking this. And
Yeah.
I appreciate those things.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I'm kind of curious then, what advice would you have if you have someone in front of you to, maybe it's an emerging leader, maybe it's somebody who has a dream and they want to pursue it. What would your advice to them be?
To make sure you're sowing into yourself. And
Hmm.
I learned
That's
that
good.
I think the John Maxwell team was a huge sacrifice for me, and I'd never done that before. I got
Mm.
my
Yeah.
education to help with family, but I never did something for my personal growth. That was the first
Oh,
time, and I saw so much from that, and I learned that you should be doing that, and that's how a lot of people really grow. And I think that's really what's helped to learn to sow into myself. And
yeah. Mm.
I've seen such a huge growth from that. And there was about a year and a half when I got so into working a lot of hours, working, that I let some of that go. And I became very discouraged, very down, very,
Mm.
no matter how hard I was working, it didn't seem like we were progressing along. But I had stopped sewing into myself as much, and just taking that annual evaluation, like what is not right. And
Mm-hmm.
so we need that. We need each other for that. Um,
Yeah.
and and I think that just seeking that mentorship up for that next level, or that next
Mm.
people that are gonna, you help somebody else and they're helping you. So it's really great when you get to the point where you get to help other people um,
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So how do you personally, keep yourself then growing? Like what are some things that you do? How do you invest in yourself? I think it's important for the listeners to see that it's a never ending process, and I think when we hear how other people do it, it's inspiring, and it helps us to be able to maybe even come up with other ways that we can grow ourselves as well. Because sometimes I think when we talk about personal growth or professional growth, I mean, it's easier, I think, professionally, but personal growth, what does that really even mean? And so I'm kind of curious, how do you invest in yourself?
Sometimes it's just taking time to read a book or
Yeah,
listening to podcasts, or
yeah,
even in the midst right now, I've got, two big deadlines at the end of this month, but yet I'm still taking the time to, um, do a abundant life class, to kind of help.
yeah.
It's like
Okay,
if
yeah,
I looked at my workload, I'm like, well, you don't have time for that. Yeah, I don't not have time for that. um, and making sure, meet with my mastermind group weekly,
mm-hmm,
just making sure that I'm continually in a support system and continually in relationship, and just being more intentional about
yeah,
developing those relationships, which really wasn't easy for me. That
mm,
was a new thing I had to learn. I'm an introvert by nature. And
sure,
so it takes a lot of energy for me to go out and do
yeah,
that. But it's very rewarding.
yeah. No, I love that, and I think that translates even into how you work with your team. Because I know that you've invested in your team, and I guess maybe I probably know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear you articulate it. But what led you to do that too? What led you to as a CEO to invest in your team to help them to grow? What was the mindset behind that?
Well, I shifted, I stopped seeing patients. Um, and that was difficult for me to have to do, to go to administrative. But I really started understanding what I needed to do, and that was to shift my attention to my employees. And
Hmm.
I wanted to see if somebody believed in me, just like you said, you borrowed that belief.
Yeah.
And so I want to sow into the folks here. We're in a rural community. There's not a huge opportunity for professionalism somewhat here. Um,
Yeah.
but you've got a lot of people who want to learn, they want to grow. And so I
Hmm.
want to foster that, and I want to bring up some, those folks, and I want to, the biggest thing I see in our world. I know we just had a big pandemic, but I think the biggest pandemic we have is hopelessness, and that's
Oh,
everywhere.
that's good. Yeah.
We have a lot of that. So just sowing hope into people, telling them they can, and
Yeah.
encouraging through the stumbles, and giving them permission to stumble, and
Mm,
it,
so good.
just being that for this other group of people, not patients but the staff, um, to be able to sow into them. And it's so exciting when I see
Hmm.
them learning and so hungry, and like, yes.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. You said something kind of in passing, and I don't want it to slip away because I think it's really important. You said that you had to, and I don't remember if you said you had to stop seeing patients, but you stopped seeing patients
Mm,
and moved more into the administrative role. What was that like for you?
devastating.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I wondered, with a heart like yours, I know it had to be really tough.
It was devastating because I love people, and I
Yeah.
loved that part. But um, and I didn't. I knew I needed to do it for a long time,
Hmm.
and I backed away one day, but the organization was crumbling because it
Hmm.
didn't have that administrative support it needed to grow,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I had to make a decision. And it was
Hmm.
but I waited way too long, and almost had to do it out of crisis mode. um,
Yeah.
but it was great. It was difficult, but I've learned to shift. My purpose is no longer sowing into the patients. My purpose is sowing into the people that are going to take care of those patients, and really
Yeah.
teaching them some of those values, and also teaching them the different techniques into connecting with patients and to treating them
Yeah.
as a whole person, because they're not being taught that in their education.
School.
So
Yeah.
we have to
Mm.
teach it a different way. So um,
Sure. Sure. Yeah. That's, I think there's, I'm just, mentally taking note of all of these lessons that you're sharing, because I think that, especially if, I'm talking now to the listeners. If you're listening and you're hearing Kim's journey, just take a note of that shift, because oftentimes as leaders, and especially if you're a business owner, sometimes we have to get out of our own way, and we have to make that shift from being where our heart is and our passion is to being able to duplicate ourselves, be able to multiply ourselves, right? And
yes.
pour now, instead of into a patient, we're pouring into our providers, or pouring into our team members, so that we can then multiply ourselves and still carry out the mission that we have for the organization. And I just think that's a really important growth point. And I'd love to be able to hear back from some of our listeners who are hearing this story, and just let us know, like, how hard has it been for you to make that shift? Because I think that's one of the harder things as a business owner to do. I really do. Because you have a passion, you have a skill set, and then you've got to jump outside of your comfort zone and then do something new.
Yeah, whole set of learning stuff, and you
Yeah.
know, when you want to do your favorite stuff, sometimes it's difficult. And the initial learning things that you didn't know before you have to learn is hard. It's
Yeah.
stretching. It's not easy. It's
Yeah.
climbing up a mountain on some things, learning things you didn't want to learn, maybe, or
Right. Right.
so. Um, but it's important to walk through. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Kim, I am so grateful for you sharing your story with me and our listeners. I know that it's going to touch somebody. I just know that. And I'd love, just, is there anything else that, comes to mind that you want to share with the listeners that, might be helpful for them? Just anything that, based on this conversation, or just something that's popped into your head. I'd love for you to just have the last word and share with the listeners.
I think the biggest thing is just learn what encourages you, because there's so many hard things that go with leaders. I think John Maxwell was saying it in June, but he said no leader has 2 good days in a row. Well, that's not totally true, but
Yeah.
it does give you an example that it's hard to be a leader, and you've got to
Yeah.
find ways and people to come around you to help lift you up in those hard times, or those down times,
Mm.
to help fuel and keep you going. So learn about what encourages you, what fuels you. Learn how to encourage yourself, because we've got
Yeah.
to learn that. But sometimes we need more, and learn the people around you that can be there when you just can't get those encouraged, and keep in contact. Encourage them, encourage, and stay in close contact. That's why I'm so intentional about
Yeah.
going to a Christmas party in
Yeah.
West Palm Beach, because I need those people. And
Yeah.
so it's just important to do.
Yeah. I think community fuels growth more than anything. And if that's something that I know that's something that I've learned, especially in this season of my life, is that I have to have community. And it fuels me. It, it lifts me up. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, Kim, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really, really deeply appreciate you and appreciate your story, and appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, David. Thank you for sewing into my people. You're awesome.
Oh, oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.